The dim glow of neon signs flickered across the rain-slicked parking lot of the Rusty Spur Saloon, a forgotten outpost on the edge of a windswept Nevada town. It was just past midnight, the kind of hour where the desert's chill seeped into your bones like an old regret. Inside, the air hung heavy with the scent of stale beer and cigarette smoke. The jukebox, crooning a faded country ballad about lost loves and endless roads. At the far end of the scarred wooden bar, a young woman, barely out of her teens with wide eyes shadowed by exhaustion, clutched a worn photograph, her fingers trembling as she scanned the faces of the rough crowd. She was Emily, and tonight desperation had driven her here, chasing whispers of a ghost from her past. Emily's heart pounded like a distant thunder as she pushed through the door earlier that evening, the bell above jingling like a mocking laugh. Her mother, Sarah, lay in a hospital bed miles away, her body frail from years of silent suffering, whispering in fevered dreams about a man who'd vanished into the fog of war. The necklace, Sarah had murmured one last time before slipping into unconsciousness. He always wore it, the silver chain with the eagle pendant. Find him, Em. Tell him. I waited. Emily had scavenged every dive from Reno to this god-forsaken spot, piecing together rumors of a biker crew that rolled through like shadows, honoring old codes in a world that had forgotten them. But the photograph in her hand, the faded image of a soldier with kind eyes and a dog-tag necklace, felt like her only lifeline. The bar's patrons barely noticed her at first. Grizzled truckers nursing whiskies, a couple of locals arguing over a pool game, the bartender wiping glasses with mechanical indifference. Emily slid onto a stool, her voice cracking as she asked the man behind the counter if he'd seen a group of riders, ones who carried stories from the old wars. He shrugged, pouring her a soda she couldn't afford, his eyes flicking to the door as if expecting trouble. That's when the rumble started, a low growl that built from the highway like an approaching storm. Harleys, dozens of them, their engines roaring in unison, cutting through the night's quiet like a promise fulfilled. The door swung open and the air shifted. Leading the pack was Jacob, a weathered man in his late 40s, his leather vest patched with the insignia of the Iron Vow, a faded emblem of crossed rifles and a chain link, symbolizing bonds unbreakable by time or distance. His face was a map of scars, a jagged line across his jaw from a shrapnel blast, eyes hollowed by nights that never ended. Jacob had ridden these roads for over 2 decades, evading the ghosts of a forgotten deployment in some dusty corner of the world. The war had taken more than his youth. It had severed him from Sarah, the woman he'd sworn to return to, their daughter unborn when his unit vanished behind enemy lines. No letters, no calls, just silence, and a necklace he'd kept as a talisman, the eagle pendant glinting under his collar like a hidden vow. Jacob's crew followed him in, a brotherhood forged in foxholes and back-alley brawls. 20 riders strong, their boots thudding against the floorboards, voices low and laced with the gravel of shared secrets. They weren't here for trouble. The Iron Vow code was clear. Protect the innocent, honor the lost. Jacob nodded to the bartender, ordering a round for the house, his gaze sweeping the room out of habit. That's when he saw her, the girl at the bar, staring at him with an intensity that stopped his world cold. Her eyes, the shape of Sarah's, locked onto the silver chain peeking from his vest. She slid off the stool, the photograph slipping from her fingers to the floor, forgotten. You. Emily's voice was a whisper at first, then sharper, cutting through the murmur of the bar like a knife. She stepped closer, her breath hitching as she pointed to the necklace. That eagle, it's the one from the picture. You're him, the soldier my mom loved, the one who never came back. The words hung in the air, heavy as the smoke curling from the ashtray. Jacob froze, his hand instinctively rising to touch the pendant, the metal warm against his skin. The crew fell silent behind him, sensing the shift. their eyes on their leader like sentinels. He didn't speak at first. How could he? The years had blurred into a haze of missions gone wrong, a chopper crash that left him stranded, comms dead, and a covert extraction that demanded he vanish to protect them all. Sarah's letters had stopped reaching him, intercepted by bureaucracy or worse, and by the time he clawed his way home, the trail had gone cold. He'd heard whispers of a child, of a life he'd abandoned without choice, but never dared confirm them. Now this girl, his daughter, stood before him, her face a mirror of the woman he'd loved, her accusation a blade to the gut. Jacob's knees buckled slightly, and he gripped the bar for support, the wood creaking under his weight. The bar's din faded to a hum, the jukebox's tune now a dirge. Emily's eyes welled with tears, a mix of fury and hope. She never stopped waiting, raised me alone, told me stories about the man who'd fight for what's right. But you left us. Why? Her voice broke, drawing stares from the room. But Jacob's world narrowed to just her. The curve of her jaw, the fire in her gaze that echoed his own stubborn resolve. He sank onto a stool, the weight of 2 decades crashing down. "I didn't leave," he rasped, his voice rough from disuse, the accent of his youth surfacing. "The war. It took everything. I was told you were gone, both of you. A lie to keep me fighting." The crew murmured, hands resting on their chairs, ready to ride at his word. Emily hesitated, then pulled out her phone, dialing the hospital with shaking hands. "Mom, it's him! He's here!" The line crackled, and in the background, a faint voice, Sarah's, gasped, alive with fragile joy. As the call connected, Jacob felt the first crack in his armored heart. This wasn't just a reunion, it was a reckoning. The iron vow had always been about promises kept, no matter the cost. He'd ride through hell itself to make this right, to face the corruption that had stolen his family, the shadowy officials who'd buried his return under red tape and threats. But first, he had to face the girl who'd found him. Emily hung up, tears streaming. "She's weak, but she wants to see you. Will you come?" Jacob nodded, standing tall, the necklace now a bridge instead of a burden. The crew rose as one, engines firing up outside like a vow renewed. Dawn was hours away, but in that moment the desert felt a little less empty. For the first time in years, Jacob had a reason to stop running, a family to claim, a promise to fulfill. And as they stepped into the night, the rumble of bikes echoed like thunder, carrying them toward redemption's uncertain road. The rain had eased into a fine mist as the convoy tore down the empty highway, the taillights of 20 Harleys streaking like red veins through the Nevada night. Jacob rode at the front, Emily clinging to the back of his bike, her arms wrapped tight around his waist, the wind whipping her hair like unspoken questions. The engine's vibration thrummed through them both, a steady pulse that drowned out the chaos in his mind. Behind them, the Iron Vow brothers flanked like guardians, their silhouettes cutting sharp against the moonlit scrubland. The desert stretched infinite and unforgiving, sagebrush blurring into shadows, the air sharp with the tang of wet earth and exhaust. Jacob's thoughts raced faster than the throttle. Sarah, alive, waiting after all these years. The hospital was an hour out, in a nameless town clinging to the interstate, but every mile felt like peeling back layers of scar tissue. He'd replayed this moment in fever dreams during endless patrols, the what-ifs piling up like spent casings. Why hadn't he fought harder to get word back? The brass had sworn her letters were undeliverable, that the family had moved on, buried him as another casualty. Lies, all of it, to keep him deployed, a cog in their machine of forgotten wars. Now, with Emily's warmth against his back, doubt gnawed like rust on his chain. What if she saw him not as the hero from her stories, but the ghost who'd left them to the wolves? Emily's voice cut through the roar. faint but fierce, her chin pressed to his shoulder. "She told me everything. How you promised to come back from that deployment no matter what. The eagle on that necklace, it was her gift, before you shipped out. Said it would keep you safe. Remind you of home." Her words twisted in him, the pendant now heavy against his chest, cool metal warmed by his skin. He nodded, though she couldn't see, his gloved hand squeezing the handlebar until the leather creaked. Home. The word tasted like dust after years of foxholes and safe houses, building the iron vow from scraps of brotherhood to honor the oaths the military had broken. The convoy slowed as they crested a rise, the hospital's lights piercing the horizon like a beacon in the gloom. It was a squat building of faded brick, windows glowing yellow against the black, the parking lot dotted with a few late-night rigs. Jacob killed the engine first, the sudden silence amplifying the drip of water from his helmet. Emily dismounted, her boots splashing in a puddle, eyes scanning the entrance with a mix of hope and fear. The crew pulled up in a loose semicircle, engines idling low, their presence a quiet thunder. Noah, Jacob's second in command, a broad-shouldered vet with a limp from the same op that had stranded them, leaned over from his bike. "We got your six, brother. Whatever's waiting in there, we're riding it out with you." Jacob clasped his shoulder, the gesture brief but ironclad. "Stay sharp. If the past catches up, it'll come with teeth." He remembered the warnings from his extraction handler. Vanish, or they vanish you. Bureaucrats who'd buried his survival under classified stamps, ensuring no loose ends. Sarah's illness. Whispers of it had reached him through back channels, but he dismissed them as traps. Now, regret burned hotter than the bike's pipes. Inside, the lobby smelled of antiseptic and stale coffee, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like angry hornets. Emily led the way to the elevator, her steps hurried, fingers twisting the hem of her jacket. Jacob followed, his boots echoing on the linoleum, each one heavier than the last. The doors slid open on the third floor, revealing a hallway lined with rooms, monitors beeping in rhythmic Morse code. A nurse at the station glanced up, her face softening at Emily's urgency. "Room 312. She's stable but resting. Family only, please." Emily flashed a tight smile. "He is family." The nurse hesitated, then nodded, waving them through. Jacob's pulse hammered as they approached the door, the wood panel scarred from years of comings and goings. He paused, hand on the knob, the weight of the moment pressing like a storm front. Emily pushed it open, the room bathed in soft lamplight, curtains drawn against the night. Sarah lay there, frail under the thin blanket, her skin pale as desert bone, tubes snaking from her arm to a machine that whispered life into her veins. But her eyes, those fierce, knowing eyes, fluttered open at the sound, locking onto Jacob with a clarity that shattered him. "Jake." Her voice was a thread, but it wove straight to his core. He crossed the room in 2 strides, dropping to his knees beside the bed, his calloused hand enveloping hers. The touch ignited memories, stolen nights before deployment, her laughter in the rain, the promise etched in silver. "It's me," he murmured, throat tight, the scars on his face pulling as he smiled through the ache. "I came back. For you. For her." Sarah's fingers tightened, tears tracing paths down her cheeks. Emily stood at the foot of the bed, arms crossed, a dam against her own flood. "He didn't know, Mom. They lied to him, kept him away." The words bridged the chasm, but shadows lingered. Sarah's condition, the doctor's grim nods in the hall, hints of a rare illness that had sapped her for years, untreated because of red tape from his official death. As they talked in hushed tones, piecing together the fractured years, Emily's childhood stories, Jacob's covert life, the iron vows, quiet acts of justice. A knock echoed from the door. The nurse entered, followed by 2 men in crisp suits, badges glinting under the light. "Mr. Harlan?" one asked, Voice clipped, eyes cold as steel. Jacob's alias, the one the vow used to shield their ops. We need to speak about your return. The air thickened, suspicion coiling like smoke. These weren't healers. They were hunters, sent to tie off the loose end that had just walked back into the light. Jacob rose slowly, positioning himself between them and the bed, his stance unyielding. Emily's eyes widened, sensing the threat, while Sarah squeezed his hand once more. A silent vow renewed. Outside, the crew's engines revved faintly, a reminder that promises weren't kept alone. The suits exchanged glances, one pulling a folder from his briefcase, papers rustling like dry leaves. Your records show you died in '03. This complicates things for everyone. Jacob's jaw set, the eagle pendant catching the light. Complicates. You stole my life. Now I'm taking it back. The room held its breath, the beeps of the monitor marking time like a ticking fuse. Redemption wasn't a quiet ride. It was a confrontation, forged in the fire of truths long buried. And as the suits pressed closer, Jacob knew the road ahead would demand more than words. It would test the bonds that had survived the dark. And now, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel, and at what moments they reach you. The fluorescent hum in room 312 grew louder in the tense silence, casting harsh shadows on the faces of the two men in suits. They stood like sentinels at the threshold, one tall and gaunt with a tie knotted too tight, the other stocky, his fingers drumming against a leather folder as if counting down to detonation. Jacob's back straightened, his body a barrier between them and the bed where Sarah lay, her breathing shallow but steady, eyes flickering with a mix of defiance and weariness. Emily edged closer to her mother, her hand finding Sarah's under the blanket, a quiet anchor in the storm brewing. Mr. Harlan, or should I say Sergeant Jacob Ellis? The tall one spoke first, his voice smooth as polished stone, but laced with an undercurrent of authority that brooked no argument. He flipped open the folder, revealing yellowed documents stamped with faded seals, classified files, the kind that buried truths under layers of ink. Your file was closed years ago. KIA in a remote op, resurfacing now. It's irregular. We represent the Department of Veteran Affairs, but let's be clear. This isn't a social call. Jacob's gaze hardened, the scars on his jaw tightening like old wounds reopening. The eagle pendant swung lightly as he shifted, catching the light in a defiant glint. He'd worn aliases like second skins during his covert years, Harlan just one more shield against the machine that had chewed him up and spat him out. But here, in this sterile room that smelled of bleach and fading hope, the masks were cracking. Irregular, he echoed, his tone low and gravelly, the rumble of a bike idling before a charge. You mean inconvenient for the suits who signed off on my ghost story to keep the funding flowing. I didn't die out there, I survived, fought my way back through hell, only to find you'd erased me to cover your tracks. The stocky agent stepped forward, his shoes squeaking on the linoleum, eyes darting to Emily and Sarah before settling back on Jacob. Watch your tone. We're here to verify identity, ensure no security risks. That deployment, it was black ops. Loose ends get tied off. Your family's been notified of your status. Official. Reopening this could endanger them. His words hung like a threat, veiled in protocol, but Jacob caught the edge. The same cold calculus that had intercepted Sarah's letters, labelled him expendable, left her to scrape by on widow's scraps while raising their daughter alone. Sarah stirred, her voice a fragile rasp, cutting through the tension. In danger? You've already done that. Years of nothing, no benefits, no answers. I buried an empty casket because of your verification. Her eyes, though dimmed by illness, burned with the fire Jacob remembered from their youth, the kind that had drawn him to her amid the chaos of base life. Emily squeezed her hand tighter, her face pale but resolute, the photograph from the bar now tucked in her pocket like a talisman of her own. Outside, the low growl of engines idled, a distant reminder of the iron vow waiting in the lot. Noah and the others had formed a perimeter, their bikes a steel wall against whatever shadows these men brought. Jacob could picture them. Leather vests zipped against the mist, hands near holsters not for guns, but for the unyielding code that bound them. The vow wasn't about rebellion. It was restitution, quiet rides to deliver aid to forgotten vets, exposing corruption in VA offices with whispers and evidence, never a shot fired. But tonight, the line blurred. The tall agent closed the folder with a snap, his smile thin as a razor. "Mrs. Ellis, your benefits were processed under standard protocols. Sergeant Ellis's survival changes nothing. Records are sealed for national security. Sign this affidavit confirming no further contact, and we can discuss reinstatement quietly." He slid a pen across a side table, the scratch of it on paper echoing like a chain, dragging through dirt. Jacob's hand shot out, snatching the pen mid-slide, snapping it in two with a crack that silenced the room. Ink bled onto his palm, dark as old blood. "No deals. You don't get to dictate my family after stealing it. I have proof. Logs from that op. The handler who fed me lies to keep me in the field. The vows collected enough to bury your department's dirt." His voice rose just enough to carry, a calculated echo that might reach the hall, where nurses' footsteps padded softly. The agents exchanged a glance, the stocky one reaching for his phone, thumb hovering over the screen. "Threats won't help. We can make this official. Restrain you for questioning. Place your family under protection." Protection. The word twisted like a knife. Jacob knew it meant isolation, more forms to drown the truth, perhaps a convenient accident for Sarah's worsening condition. Whispers from other vets in the vow spoke of similar fates, claims denied, lives unraveled by the very system sworn to safeguard them. Emily stepped forward then, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "He's not a threat. He's my father. The one who promised to come back, and you made sure he couldn't. Mom's sick because of this. Stress, no support. If you take him, you take us all." Her words carried the weight of years unspoken, a daughter's plea wrapped in the steel of inherited resolve. Sarah nodded weakly, her grip on Jacob's sleeve a silent affirmation. The tall agent's jaw clenched, but before he could retort, a knock rattled the door, sharp, insistent. Noah poked his head in, his broad frame filling the frame, eyes scanning the room like a scout on patrol. "Everything all right in here, Jake? Nurse said we might have company." Behind him, shadows of the crew loomed in the hall, their presence a tide turning. The agent stiffened, the folder clutched tighter, realizing the leverage had shifted. One man against a ghost was control. Against a brotherhood forged in fire, it was folly. Jacob met their stares, unblinking. "Time to go. Tell your bosses the dead man's walking, and he's got unfinished business." The words weren't bluster, they were a vow, echoing the Iron Vow's creed. The agents backed toward the door, murmurs of "this isn't over" trailing like exhaust fumes. But they retreated, suits rumpled, authority frayed. As the door clicked shut, the room exhaled. Sarah's monitor beeped steadily, a fragile rhythm of survival. Jacob sank into a chair beside her, Emily perching on the bed's edge, the three of them a fragile circle against the encroaching night. But peace was fleeting. The agent's visit was a spark, igniting the fuse of pursuit. Jacob knew they'd return with warrants, or worse, operatives from deeper shadows. The road to redemption demanded more than reunion. It required reckoning, a ride through institutional thorns to unearth the lies that had bound him. Outside, the mist had thickened into fog, cloaking the convoy as they revved to life. Noah clapped Jacob's shoulder on the way out. "We ride at dawn. Secure the proof, brother. For her, for all of us. The engines roared, a symphony of loyalty cutting the haze, carrying the promise that some bonds, once reforged, could weather any storm. Jacob lingered a moment longer, kissing Sarah's forehead, whispering vows anew. The desert called, but now it led home, not to escape, but to claim what was stolen. And as the first grey light pierced the horizon, the weight of the eagle pendant felt lighter, a symbol not of loss but of wings unfurling. The first rays of dawn crept over the jagged silhouette of the Sierra Nevada, painting the hospital parking lot in hues of burnt orange and steel grey. The Iron Vow convoy idled like patient beasts, exhaust curling into the chill air, mingling with the scent of dew-kissed asphalt and distant pine. Jacob stepped out of the sliding doors, his boots crunching gravel, the eagle pendant tucked safely under his collar, now a quiet pulse against his skin. Sarah's hand lingered in his memory, cool, insistent, a tether pulling him back from the abyss. "Go," she'd whispered as the nurses adjusted her IV, her voice threading through the fog of pain meds. "Get the truth. Bring it home to us." Emily walked beside him, her eyes red-rimmed but fierce, carrying a small duffel from Sarah's room. Clothes, a few photos, and the hospital's discharge papers that bought them time, but not safety. Noah waited by Jacob's Harley, arms crossed over his vest, the Iron Vow patch catching the light like a badge of forgotten oaths. The crew had swelled overnight. Word had spread through encrypted texts and backroad calls. Vets from Reno, a mechanic from Carson City, even a former medic who'd patched Jacob up in some godforsaken outpost. 30 strong now, they formed a loose circle, faces etched with the quiet resolve of men who'd stared down worse than bureaucrats. "Dawn patrol set," Noah said, handing Jacob a thermos of black coffee, steam rising like battlefield smoke. "We hit the old safe house first. Your lockbox from the early days, logs, handlers' notes, everything that proves the brass buried you alive." Jacob nodded, taking a sip that burned away the night's dregs. The safe house was a derelict cabin off Route 50, a relic from his first month stateside, where he'd stashed evidence of the op gone wrong. Falsified reports, intercepted comms, names of the officials who'd signed his death certificate to silence a whistleblower. Sarah's illness tied into it too. Denied care because she was widow of a ghost, her claims lost in the shuffle of corruption. Exposing it meant dragging the department's skeletons into the light, but the agent's visit had lit the fuse. They wouldn't wait. Reinforcements would roll in by noon. Warrants or shadows, whichever came first. Emily mounted up behind him, her grip tentative at first, then firm, as if anchoring herself to the man she'd only known from stories. The engine roared to life, a deep-throated bellow that vibrated through their bones, scattering the morning mist. The convoy surged forward, tires humming over cracked pavement, the desert awakening around them, cacti standing sentinel, wind whispering through Joshua trees like secrets half told. Jacob felt the road's rhythm steady his pulse, each mile a step toward justice, not vengeance. The vow's code echoed in his mind: honor the promise, protect the pack. For Sarah, wasting away on that bed, every second counted. They veered off the interstate onto a dirt track, dust plumes rising like signals in the rear view. The cabin emerged from the scrub, weathered planks sagging under years of neglect, windows boarded like blind eyes. Noah kicked the door in with a solid boot, the wood splintering with a crack that echoed across the empty valley. Inside, the air was stale, thick with the must of abandonment. Faded maps pinned to walls, a cot shrouded in dust, and in the corner, a rusted footlocker stamped with Jacob's old unit insignia. He knelt, fingers tracing the lock, memories flooding back, the chopper's whine as it ditched, the handler's voice crackling over radio. "You're KIA now, Ellis, for the greater good." Lies that had cost him everything. The lock gave way with a twist of a hidden key from his boot. revealing stacks of files yellowed with age, a thumb drive wrapped in oilcloth, and a single letter, Sarah's, undelivered, her handwriting looping with love and fear. Emily's breath caught as she read over his shoulder, the words blurring through unshed tears. She wrote this right after I was born. Thought you were gone forever. Jacob's throat tightened, the paper crinkling in his fist. This was the proof. Timelines mismatched, signatures forged, a trail leading to a deputy director who'd profited from Black Ops slush funds. Releasing it would topple desks, but it would clear his name, unlock Sarah's benefits, give her a fighting chance. A distant rumble broke the moment, not thunder but engines closing fast. Noah peered through a crack in the boards, his face hardening. Suits brought friends. Black SUVs, unmarked, 4 vehicles heavy. The crew moved like shadows, positioning themselves at windows and doors, hands on wrenches and chains, not weapons but tools of resolve. Jacob pocketed the drive, tucking the letter into Emily's hand. Stay low. This ends today, one way or another. She nodded, fire in her eyes mirroring his. The bond between them forging in the heat of necessity. The SUVs skidded to a halt outside, doors slamming like judgments. The tall agent from the hospital emerged first, flanked by 4 in tactical gear, vests bulging with authority's weight. Ellis, step out. We have a federal hold, national security. His voice boomed over a bullhorn, but Jacob heard the edge of desperation. They knew about the safe house, a leak or just good intel. Noah signaled the crew, and as one, the Harleys fired up inside the cabin's lean-to, a deafening chorus that shook the walls. Jacob stepped onto the porch, hands visible, Emily behind him with the crew fanning out. Security, yours or mine, you buried me to hide your greed. This ends with the truth going public. The agent sneered, gesturing to his team who advanced with zip ties and drawn stances. But the vow held ground, a wall of leather and loyalty, engines revving in warning, tension coiled like a spring, the air electric with unspoken standoffs. No shots, just the grind of wills. In that frozen beat, Emily's voice rang out, clear and unyielding. You think you can erase us? My mum's fighting because of you. My dad's here now. We're the loose end you can't tie. Her words hung, a moral gauntlet stirring doubt in the agent's ranks. One tactical paused, glancing at the files visible in Jacob's grip. The tall agent faltered, radio crackling with orders from afar. But the momentum shifted. The vow's presence wasn't aggression, it was testament, a family chosen standing against the machine. As sirens wailed faintly in the distance, local PD, perhaps swayed by a tip, Noah gunned his bike, leading a slow circle around the perimeter. The agents backed off, retreating to their vehicles, the standoff dissolving into exhaust and dust. Jacob exhaled, the weight of the drive in his pocket a promise weaponized. They'd won time, but the hunt was on. Mounting up, he pulled Emily close. The convoy peeling out toward the highway, dawn fully broken now, roads gleaming like veins of silver. Back at the hospital by mid-morning, Sarah waited, stronger in spirit if not body, the files spread on her tray table like battle plans. Jacob briefed her softly, the room a sanctuary amid the storm. We'll upload it, anonymous drop to every vet network, every paper that cares. Her smile was faint but radiant, hand on his. You kept your word, Jake. That's enough. But as nurses bustled and the crew stood guard outside, Jacob knew the ride wasn't over. Corruption's roots ran deep, demanding a final push. Redemption was a convoy, rolling forward, unbreakable. If this story is touching your heart, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear about unbreakable promises. The midday sun beat down on the hospital like a relentless interrogator, turning the parking lot into a shimmering haze of heat waves rising from blacktop, scarred by years of comings and goings. Jacob paced the narrow corridor outside room 312, the linoleum cool under his boots, a stark contrast to the fire simmering in his chest. The eagle pendant swung with each step, a subtle reminder of oaths unbroken, its silver warmed by the proximity to Sarah's renewed spark of life. Inside, Emily sat by her mother's bed, the duffel bag open on the floor, spilling forth faded letters and the thumb drive that held the key to their unraveling nightmare. Sarah's color had improved slightly under the morning's IV drip, her eyes clearer now, tracking Jacob's shadow through the half-open door like a lighthouse piercing fog. Noah leaned against the wall nearby, his massive frame a sentinel, scrolling through a burner phone with thumbs calloused from wrenches and rifle grips. The crew had dispersed strategically, some watching the entrances, others riding perimeter patrols along the dusty back roads, their Harleys humming like vigilant watchdogs. "Upload sites ready," Noah murmured, voice low as the distant whir of a janitor's cart. Anonymous server bounced through proxies, hits every vet forum, newswire, even that podcaster who digs into brass scandals. Once it's out, no burying it. Jacob stopped pacing, nodding, the weight of decisions settling like dust after a storm. This wasn't just data, it was reckoning. Forged reports exposing how his death had funneled funds to ghost projects, how Sarah's claims had been denied to silence a widow's grief, her illness festering untreated in the shadows of red tape. Pushing back into the room, Jacob knelt beside the bed, taking Sarah's hand in his. Her skin felt fragile, veined like cracked earth after drought, but her grip held the unyielding strength of the woman who'd raised Emily on stories of honor amid abandonment. "It's time," he said softly, the words tasting of finality. Emily looked up from the laptop balanced on her knees, the screen's glow casting blue shadows on her face, highlighting the determination etched there, a mirror of his own resolve, inherited through blood and narrative. "Mom, you sure?" Sarah's nod was slow, deliberate, her breath steadying as if drawing from some inner reserve. "Do it, Jake. For the girl I raised to believe in promises, for the man who kept his even when the world tried to break it." Emily's fingers hovered over the keys, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. The room fell into a hush, broken only by the rhythmic beep of the monitor and the faint tick of the wall clock, marking seconds toward exposure. Jacob watched her, pride swelling amid the ache, this stranger who'd become daughter in a single night, bridging the chasm his absence had carved. Memories flickered, the day he'd shipped out, Sarah's tear-streaked face at the bus depot, the necklace slipped into his palm with a whispered, "Come back to us." The war had twisted that vow into silence, but here, in this sterile sanctum, it reformed, unbreakable as the iron vow's chain. With a deep breath, Emily clicked enter. The upload bar crept forward, agonizingly slow, each percentage a step into the unknown. Outside, the world held its breath. A nurse passed the door without glancing in, oblivious to the digital avalanche building. Jacob's mind raced to contingencies. The agent's retreat at the safe house had been tactical, not surrender. They'd regroup, spin narratives of fabricated evidence from a deranged vet, but the Vow's network was vast, tendrils in every garage and diner from here to the coast. Allies who'd lost brothers to similar lies would amplify the truth, turning whispers into roars. The progress hit 100, a soft chime confirming transmission. Emily closed the laptop with a snap, her shoulders sagging in release, but Jacob's instincts prickled. A shadow shifted in the hallway, too deliberate for staff. He rose fluidly, hand signaling Noah, who pocketed the phone and moved to the window, peering through the blinds at the lot below. Two black sedans idled at the far edge, tinted windows reflecting the sun like blind mirrors, engines purring with predatory patience. "They're here," Noah growled, the words laced with the gravel of old battlefields. brought backup. Looks like feds, not locals. Sarah's hand tightened in Jacob's. Go. Protect what we've started. Her voice carried no fear, only the quiet command of a woman who'd endured solitude's siege. Emily stood, slipping the drive into her pocket, eyes meeting Jacob's in silent pact. The family chosen extended beyond blood now, the vow waiting like thunder on the horizon. Jacob pulled Sarah close for a brief embrace, inhaling the faint scent of hospital soap mingled with her enduring warmth, then turned to Emily. Stay with her, we'll handle the gatekeepers. They moved as one, Noah leading to a side stairwell, boots silent on the steps. The air grew thicker with tension, the building's hum amplifying into a distant roar as they emerged into the loading dock, where a cluster of bikes waited, keys in ignitions, courtesy of a lookout. Jacob straddled his Harley, the leather seat familiar as an old scar, Emily's absence a hollow pull, but necessary steel. The engine caught with a throaty snarl, vibrating through him like resolve solidifying. Noah mounted beside, revving in sync, the crew materializing from alcoves, 30 shadows coalescing into formation, vests zipped, faces set in the unblinking focus of men who'd ridden through worse dawns. The sedans accelerated as the convoy peeled out, tires screeching on gravel, dust billowing like a veil of defiance. Jacob led the charge onto the access road, wind whipping his face, the pendant bouncing against his chest in rhythm with the throttle. Behind, the sedans gave chase, lights flashing silently. No sirens yet. A covert hunt to contain the leak before it spread. The highway opened before them, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through sun-baked flats, mirages dancing on the horizon like illusions of escape. Jacob glanced in the mirror, seeing the vow's unbreakable line, Noah signaling splits to flank if needed. But this ride wasn't flight, it was diversion, buying hours for the upload to route. Jacob's mind sharpened on the plan. Rendezvous at the old quarry 20 miles out, a natural choke point where the crew could hold ground without crossing into violence. The sedans closed, one pulling parallel, a window rolling down to reveal the tall agent's face, twisted in fury, gesturing wildly. "Pull over, Ellis! You're disseminating classified material!" His shout was lost to the wind, but the intent clear, desperation cracking the facade. Jacob twisted the throttle, surging ahead, the engine's bellow a retort in itself. The quarry loomed, craters pockmarked like war wounds, chain-link fences sagging under neglect. The convoy fanned out, bikes forming a barrier at the entrance, dust settling in swirling eddies. The sedans braked hard, agents spilling out, 6 now, hands on belts. Radios crackling with urgent calls. Jacob dismounted first, stance wide, the eagle glinting in the sun like a challenge. "Truth's out. Your house of cards is folding. Call off the dogs or the vow rides this to every doorstep in D.C. The tall agent advanced, flanked by 2, his face flushed under the relentless light. "You think a few files change anything? This is treason." A hard but doubt flickered in his eyes, the upload's ripples already hitting, Jacob's phone buzzing with confirmations, forums lighting up, a journalist tweeting leads, vets sharing stories of similar graves. Noah stepped up, the crew a silent phalanx, chains dangling loosely, not threats but symbols of bonds that outlasted badges. Tension peaked, the air thick with standoff's electric hum. The desert wind carrying faint echoes of distant traffic. One agent hesitated, glancing at his partner, the moral fracture widening. "Stand down," the stocky one muttered finally, voice strained as higher calls filtered through. The truth had breached. Containment failed. They retreated to their vehicles, engines whining in reverse, leaving the quarry in uneasy quiet. Jacob exhaled. The crew murmuring approvals, hands clapping shoulders in solidarity. But victory tasted bittersweet. The ride back would bring fallout, investigations, perhaps hearings. Yet as they mounted up, the sun climbing higher, Jacob felt the shift. promises fulfilled not in isolation, but through the family forged in fire. Sarah and Emily waited, the core of it all, and for them, he'd navigate the thorns ahead. The convoy rolled out, dust trailing like a banner of hard-won dawn, the road ahead uncertain but shared, unbreakable. The tires hummed over sun-cracked asphalt as the Iron Vow convoy carved a path back toward the hospital, the midday glare softening into the golden haze of late afternoon. Jacob rode point, the wind tearing at his vest, carrying the faint, acrid tang of quarry dust that clung to his skin like the residue of confrontation. The eagle pendant settled against his chest, no longer a weight of regret, but a compass pointing homeward. Behind him, the brothers flanked in tight formation, Noah's bike a steady shadow to his right, the others stretching out like an unbreakable chain, engines thrumming in harmonious growl. Emily's absence gnawed at him, but the burner phone in his pocket buzzed with her update. Sarah stable, the room quiet, the upload's waves already crashing against the shores of hidden truths. The desert blurred by in strokes of ochre and sage, mirages shimmering on the horizon like half-forgotten dreams. Jacob's mind replayed the quarry standoff, the agent's retreat. Their radios alive with frantic overrides, the moral dam breaking under the flood of evidence. Forums were ablaze now, veterans' voices rising in a chorus long silenced, journalists circling like hawks over fresh carrion. The deputy director's name had surfaced in the files, a thread pulling at the hem of greater corruption. Black ops budgets siphoned to private coffers, families like Sarah's left to wither in the margins. It wasn't vengeance Jacob sought, but restoration, the quiet justice of a promise reclaimed, etched in the code that had bound the vow through darker roads. As the hospital silhouette rose against the skyline, a squat fortress of brick and resolve, Jacob signaled the pull-off. The crew decelerated in unison, boots hitting pavement in a scattered rhythm, the sudden silence amplifying the distant call of a hawk wheeling overhead. Noah dismounted first, clapping Jacob's shoulder with a grip like forged iron. "It's done, brother. The suits'll scramble, but the truth's got legs now. Ride easy." His eyes, shadowed by the brim of his cap, held the weight of shared scars. Lost comrades, oaths sworn in the dead of night. The others nodded, dispersing to watch posts and supply runs, their loyalty a silent vigil, the family chosen that had carried Jacob through the void. He entered through the side door, the cool rush of air-conditioned halls a balm against the heat, the scent of antiseptic mingling with the faint floral note of Sarah's room. Emily looked up from her chair by the window, her face lighting with relief. The laptop closed on her lap like a sealed testament. "It's spreading," she said, voice hushed but vibrant, holding out the phone. Headlines flickered. "Forgotten vet exposes VA cover-up. Widow's fight ignites national probe." Sarah lay propped on pillows, her color warmer, a half-smile curving her lips as Jacob approached. The monitor's beep had steadied, a metronome of fragile triumph, tubes less intrusive now under the promise of expedited care. Jacob sank into the chair beside her, enveloping her hand in his, the calluses of his palms rough against her softening skin. They backed off, the files. "They're out. Benefits incoming. Real ones this time. No more ghosts." Sarah's eyes met his. Deep pools reflecting the man she'd mourned and loved in equal measure, the years folding away like worn pages. "You came back," she whispered, her thumb tracing the scars on his knuckles, memories of pre-war dances and whispered vows surfacing in the touch. "Not just for me, for her, for us." Emily leaned in, bridging the space. Her head resting on Sarah's shoulder, the three of them a circle unbroken, forged in loss and refired in truth. Tears traced silent paths down Emily's cheeks, but her voice held steady, laced with the fire of newfound roots. "The stories you told, Mum, they weren't fairy tales." He kept the promise, even when they tried to bury it. Jacob pulled her into the embrace, the scent of her shampoo. Clean, like desert rain, mingling with the room's sterile hush. This was redemption's core, not grand gestures or roaring engines, but the quiet mending of fractures, the honor of presence after absence. Outside, the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the lot, where the vows' bikes gleamed like sentinels, a reminder that some battles were won in the heart's unyielding terrain. Word came by evening, a call from a sympathetic contact in the VA, voice clipped but contrite, confirming the probe's launch. Sarah's treatment would shift, specialists en route, funds unlocked, the red tape severed by the blade of exposure. The agents? Reassigned, their threads unraveling in internal audits, the machine grinding against its own gears. Jacob watched from the window as Noah led a final patrol, taillights fading into twilight. The brotherhood's bond, a legacy etched in miles and loyalty. He'd ride with them still, quiet runs for other forgotten souls. But home anchored him now, a beacon amid the endless road. As night cloaked the desert, the room filled with soft conversation, laughter threading through the ache of years reclaimed. Sarah's hand stayed in Jacob's, Emily's stories weaving new chapters into the old. The eagle pendant caught the lamplight, a symbol transformed, not of war's theft, but of promises enduring, families chosen and blood-bound, justice poetic in its quiet arrival. In this fragile piece, Jacob felt the weight lift, the horizon no longer a line of escape but one of return. The road had led him back, and for the first time, he rode not alone. Thank you for riding this journey with us. If stories of unbreakable promises and quiet courage touch your soul, subscribe for more. Let's keep the fire of honor alive together.